Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Corey Webb, and I'm the Marketing Director here at Churn, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar titled Mastering Multi-Threading Strategies for Expanding Customer Relationships and Revenue. Before we get started, I do want to remind you that we are recording today's session, and we'll be sending out a link to the recording tomorrow. Throughout the presentation, please submit your questions via the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we will address as many as we can during the Q&A portion at the end of Emilia's presentation. Now, I'm pleased to introduce to you our speaker today. We have Emilia D'Anzica. Emilia is the founder and managing partner of Growth Molecules, which is a customer success advisory firm that helps companies protect and grow their revenue. Today's webinar topic is something really relevant, and I'm excited to have Emilia here today to talk to us about multi-threading. Also, the Growth Molecules team has recently put together a guide on multi-threading that we'll be sharing in the follow-up emails we'll be sending out tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. With that, I will turn it over to you, Emilia.
Hi, Corey, and hi, everyone who's joined us today. It is so great to be part of this conversation and to discuss something I'm very passionate about, not only teaching it, but seeing the outcomes with our clients. So thank you for inviting me. Just a quick intro. I'm in Sonoma County, California, where it is wet and there's no end in sight with the rain. I've been in customer success for about 20 years, and I've held several positions, and today I lead a customer management consulting firm like Corey mentioned, and we do teach multi-threading. Like I mentioned, it's one of my favorite topics. All right, well, enough about me. Let's learn about you. Is your company currently teaching and practicing multi-threading and customer success? If you can share a little bit about what you're doing at your organization, I think it will be a great way to start the conversation.
Give it just one more second, and then I'll close. I'm seeing lots of responses come in. It's popping, moving all around. Okay. Let's end the poll, and I will share the results.
All right. All right. Well, it's interesting if you're able to see it. It's almost a fairly even split. What I find interesting is the uncertain. And this is before we were on this call, Corey and I were discussing how many executives I connect with through our organization. And when we mentioned, well, is your company currently multi-threading? Often the question back instead of an answer is, what is that? And then we dive into, well, what does multi-threaded relationships mean? And so the uncertain, I'm on a mission to change, and really excited that you're here today. All right, well, let's get to the agenda. So first of all, why multi-threading is essential for customer success organizations like hopefully yours, how to get started with this powerful skill. Often it's just the starting, and then once you start practicing, the conversations with your clients change. I'm really excited that Corey agreed to share our guide for organizations after today's call. And then we'll get into what should you expect through multi-threading, especially if you're tracking it and incentivizing your teams to really make it a center of their relationship building. And of course, we'll get to Q&A. So if you have questions, by all means, do put it in the Q&A section, and I will periodically look up and try to answer, but we'll leave ample time at the end as well. All right, so why is multi-threading essential for CS? One more poll, because I'm curious to see what you all think about the why we're all here. So what is the biggest customer account expansion challenge that you have this quarter? And I'd love to just compare it, especially since I asked this question last year with an organization, TSIA, and I'll share some of the findings in today's call as well. Give it another second.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll and share the results out.
All right, so this is a common answer budget, but I hope I can change this conversation around budget and see that the outcomes of multi-threading far outweigh the budget. And maybe you don't even need to be spending money on multi-threading if you really make it part of your culture and growth mindset. So that's an interesting one. Loss of champion, we'll absolutely talk about that today. And the lack of strong client relationships is really, really important to dig into with your team. So we'll certainly do that. As for the uncertain, we can change that by asking more questions. So we can move forward, move that out of the way. And so what is multi-threading? Let's define what it is first. First of all, when you apply to customer success, all too often companies assume that the salesperson will be responsible for this. And it is just as much the responsibility of a CSM. And the reason I say that is a salesperson will spend time, maybe it's a short sales cycle, but maybe it's a long one, and build trust with your clients. But once they introduce the CSM, it's really important that the CSM really understand who is the stakeholder and who are all the different people who are going to influence in a year or a month from now. Do we continue this relationship with your organization? So building strong relationships often falls on the customer success manager. And over again, when we ask clients, what is your biggest challenge? They say loss of champion or someone on our team has left and we only have one contact in the organization and they don't see the value in our product. We're essentially having to resell. So it's important to build relationships. And when you apply to CS, it really is a skill set that can help fight churn throughout the customer journey, especially if you want to escalate. If you don't have anyone to escalate or you have a relationship with anyone except one person, it's hard to move past that person to really create a cohesive alignment around why your product can have influence on their organization and across other departments, not just one per se. Third, we live in a competitive world. If you just think of ChatGPT coming out, suddenly there are many more applications claiming they do the same thing and better and faster. And so your product, unless you're a unicorn with absolutely no competition except maybe homegrown or an Excel sheet, you probably have competition. And so if you're able to multi-thread, you're able to have an edge over your competitors, especially in SaaS. If you have a whole team behind your product that sees its value instead of one, it's a lot harder to remove when your champion leaves. And then I wanted to share this stat I found so interesting on LinkedIn. I wish there was more research, but hopefully today's webinar and the last one I did on this topic will continue to add to the research out there. According to LinkedIn, only 9% of companies share that they multi-thread. And this was specific to sales. I could not find any information online around customer success multi-threading. So now is the time to change that story. So what happens when you don't multi-thread? These are the common mistakes. You can put this in when your team says, we don't have time to multi-thread, we're drowning. Well, this is a reason why you want to reconsider and how it can actually make your jobs easier. Relying on a single point of contact, like I mentioned, it can be the end of your relationship with the client. You're essentially having to resell the product to the organization if the champion leaves. So if your CS team is not connecting with people at the organization when you first sign that client on your platform, now is the time. You should all be on LinkedIn. making connections, finding out when people are changing jobs and connecting with that person who signed the contract. You may not be speaking to them on a regular cadence, but it's important that you know who they are and that they know the impact your organization is giving to their company. All right, CSMs, if we don't ask enough questions, then we may be feeding our clients information or features they don't care about. So it's important that you ask your clients questions, or if they've just spent 6 months giving answers to the sales team about their pain points, talk to your sales team, make sure it's a seamless handoff, and get confirmation not only from the champion who signed that contract or brought you in, but also the project managers and the people who are going to help you implement, the IT team, and then of course the end users. Really understand what is the use case and what do they care about relieving instead of trying to show them all of your product features. And then not taking the time to document the information. Obviously, as a consultant, we see a lot of customer success platform information and CRM information, and the lack of documentation that goes in there is very challenging to overcome. If you keep allowing it to happen in your organization, suddenly your champion leaves, or there's a change in budget or a change in strategy. Well, if you don't have any contacts or real strong relationships, it's hard to get in there and ask the questions about how can we help you as you're going through this change. And then, as I mentioned, really building relationships on LinkedIn, understanding the industry you're serving. Often CSMs, when we are doing assessments with clients and we're anonymously surveying the CSMs and asking them, what are your biggest challenges today serving your clients? One of the top things they share with us is, we don't understand our industry well enough. We don't understand the client pain points. We're potentially, first and foremost, a CSM. We're here to help expand the relationships or close the renewals. We're new to this industry. Well, great way to change that is getting on LinkedIn, understanding the landscape and understanding your client. So how do you get started with this skill? It starts with leadership. I'll give you a hint. It starts with leadership and making it a part of your company culture. But let's pause for a moment and ask the audience here, who is responsible for finding opportunities that are new within a customer account? All right, this is interesting coming in. I see a lot of people answering. Just give it another second.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close the poll and share the results.
All right. Wow, this is really interesting. I was on a interview this morning with a company in India, and they asked me a question around, isn't customer success everyone's job at a company? And I struggle with this question, along with this question, who's responsible for finding new opportunities? Yes, of course, we will accept all new potential opportunities out there. But what you really want to do is make sure someone is responsible for it, right? Someone who has a number tied to their revenue stream. And when I was at an organization, while everyone, their paycheck once a year was determined by company goals, a 5% incentive. That is the top 3 goals of the company, the North Star. But there was also a team responsible for sales, right? Commission-based. There was a customer success team, an account management team. We all had clear definitions for what our role is. So for a company to say, well, everyone's responsible for it, but there's no strategy behind it, I argue that you would potentially be leaving a lot of money on the table. So it's really important to think about, are you really making this a priority in your company's culture and holding a team responsible, measuring the outcomes with a customer success platform? It's very simple to do, and there's little excuse why multi-threading shouldn't be someone or an organization's responsibilities. This is really interesting information from TSIA. I even before 2015 can remember leaders in customer success arguing that no, customer success should never be talking about financials and expansion or worrying about the renewal. They're just here to provide adoption. That story has changed drastically in 2024. You've seen it on LinkedIn if you're following some of the leaders in customer success. I call them clickbait. Customer success is dead. We're all becoming salespeople. Actually, I don't think that's true at all, but we do have a charter for expansion, and that's because we're asking more questions, we're identifying more opportunities for growth, but we're also able, through questions and building relationships, identifying when is there a risk. And of course, a customer success platform, I'll call it CSP to simplify for the rest of the webinar, but is a very fast way to find expansion and risks in your customer relationships. So the conversation's changing, and customer success should absolutely have part of their job description, multi-threading, right? It's part of relationship building. So data point, 71% of companies surveyed last year by TSIA have CSMs focused on leading generation, revenue generation activities. So that story is very much changing. And I'm excited about that. It's giving CSMs confidence to do more than just one activity of relationship building or focused on adoption and of every feature, but rather building relationships and understanding what are your top 3 pain points this quarter, because next quarter they may change drastically and there may be changes in the organization due to things we can't control. And we saw that with COVID in 2020. We see that with the market changing even this month very quickly. So how does multi-threading work for CSMs? First, it gives them time to focus on relationship building. With today's technology, we have note-taking platforms out there. There's so many to name, but with more AI going into customer success platforms, for example, CSMs are no longer having to do the mundane work we were expected to do in 2015 or even 2 years ago. It's drastically changed with AI, and as a result, we're able to focus more times on relationship building and asking the right questions. The multi-threading also improves performance, because if I'm more confident with the company and understand what they do, and I know more than one person in the organization, I can start understanding not only a more holistic view, but I can start gaining a confidence in my performance with the client. As well, it breaks down internal silos. Even today, it is amazing when we do assessments of our clients and we survey them, we interview the clients, how many silos exist in organizations. And even if you're bringing teams back into an office, that doesn't necessarily, there shouldn't be an assumption that silos are being broken down. I believe with the Zoom and more people working from home, unless it's part of your culture where CS is regularly meeting and getting to know the product team or the engineering team or other teams, marketing, for example, you're missing out on opportunities to multi-thread more often. And a great example I'll give is marketing is building marketing assets and content for prospects, and they're leveraging customer stories. They may not necessarily hear and see the stories day to day with your users. Instead, they're focused on the champions, the big titles that will sell to prospects. But by listening to the day-to-day users and seeing what their pain points are, how your product is making those people heroes in their organization, helping them level up and get new titles, get bonuses, move up the career ladder. It really can help not only break down silos, but have a better understanding of your client and their needs. And then what does every company care about? Hopefully it's their people. Of course, we want that, but we also want the company to protect and grow their revenue so that they can keep providing jobs and growing more products, offering more products, and bringing in new clients. And as customer success professionals, now more than ever, as companies are cutting budgets in many industries, not all of them, because we do work with clients that their industry is thriving right now. For customers and their revenue are critical, especially when companies are cutting budget and really looking at their tech stack. All right, in my 20 plus years in SaaS, and I've loved every minute of it, there are two main causes for churn. David Skock first talked about this. One is the failure to successfully onboard a customer. And through our assessments, we see this over and over again. The biggest challenge is the poor adoption. CSMs are being challenged to onboard within 30 days or whatever number of days your organization has set forth, and with X number of features. That's great, but is that what the customer really needs right now? They may have a key event coming up and they need a system to be standing, and they need the following two things working in it so that they can launch their event. Why are you trying to show them all the other features? Let's make them a hero at their event. And then let's focus on the next program to really help drive adoption as part of a bigger strategy. And then secondly is losing the champion. So at the end of onboarding, are you sending out that survey? Are you asking them during the executive review, how are you feeling about this relationship with our organization? Are you getting what you thought you signed up for? And making sure that that champion at the beginning who signed the contract was there at the sign off during onboarding. So often when I've worked with clients, I see all these clients marked in a CSP as onboarded, but then when I'm looking at the key moments, many of them haven't been achieved, or the executive wasn't on the sign off to maybe the customer success manager, or some of the APIs that were promised haven't been set up yet. Why is this customer marked live and onboarded? And if a new champion comes in and they've been working with the product for the past few years at their previous organization, they don't care how great your product is. They've got goals to achieve in 30, 60, 90 days. And if they can rip yours out and replace it with something they feel confident with and knows that works, they're going to do it. And so it's really, really important that you have an ecosystem of champions of your product that can continue to use it and say, well, before you rip this out, let's evaluate what that would mean. And let's show you how we can gain value and keep the momentum moving without having to export all our data into another platform. All right, so what's your action plan? First, make sure you have technology to support your initiative. All too often, even companies who are managing clients with millions of dollars in annual revenue, they're running out of spreadsheets or a homegrown system that isn't tended to. And that can only take you so far. If you have a technology to support your initiative, it can be so much more powerful. Most will start with the CRM. Hopefully you're requiring your salespeople to put at least 2 contacts, unless you're selling a product-led product where companies maybe only have 1 or 2 people. That's a very different scenario. But if you're in the enterprise space, having technology to support your initiative is not only more powerful to see, are our CSMs asking the right questions, especially if you have call recording, but also, are we tracking the right number of contacts, the right contacts in the organization, and are they introducing us to other departments? Are they champions? Are they marked as champions that we can use as a reference for the sales team? And have any of them recently been on a webinar? Have they recently maybe referred a client to you? Have they written about you on social media recently? All of those different things are incredibly important to track. And again, an Excel sheet will only take you so far. So at the beginning, it's really important to build a task force across your sales and CS team and build a strategy. So having a task force, just like you have a task force to go after maybe your clients that have churned in 6 months from now, it's important to make multi-threading a common action across these organizations. So asking questions, for example, Corey, who else in your organization can benefit from using our product or taking part in training, for example? Having those kind of conversations and having the confidence to ask those questions is incredibly important. And how do you do it? How do you build this confidence? You role play. As a leader, be the first to raise your hand and say, I'm going to role play with Jane, and I'm going to be the CSM who's going to ask the questions so that I can include more people. And a common question or objection I get often is, well, what if the person says no? I don't need the stakeholder to be part of this conversation. If the stakeholders sign the contract or they were part of the executive kickoff, it's perfectly fine to CC them and let them know on a quarterly cadence that you are going to be including them on a report, on a status of what we've achieved, the wins, any challenges we've worked through. That's a great way to keep your stakeholders involved in your action plan, and really sharing across all of sales and CS the power of multi-threading and why the teams can work together to really build more allies across an organization. And of course, reporting on it on a quarterly basis. You want to celebrate your wins. And through those wins, that storytelling, the new people who join your organization will learn from it as well. Dashboard, again, with regular updates. Don't just share them with your team, especially if you're in a remote first culture. Make sure you have, during a team all hands, for example, share some of those stories. Raise your hand and say, I'd like to share a 5-minute story about how we were able to grow a customer account through more relationships. So those stories can be incredibly powerful. And then training for maximum outcomes. We've trained thousands of people through our academy, and it's interesting when CS leaders will tell us, well, our team's gone through that training through a recorded webinar already. Great, that's great, but what did they do with it? Did they record themselves practicing with another person? Did they watch back their conversation with one of their clients? Did they practice multi-threading and questions that led to more relationship growth? So that mindset of growth isn't a one-time event. We are all capable of learning, and the more we practice a skill, the more confident we become with it. So what are the expected outcomes from multi-threading? Time for a question again for all of you. Why hasn't your company focused on multi-threading in the past? And some of you may be doing this very effectively. So there's an option to fill that in as well.
Lots of answers coming in, but I'll give a little bit more time for folks
Yes,
to respond.
there are more options, so it makes sense. And while we're filling that in, I'll quickly look at the questions. All right, some great questions. I can't wait to answer them. We'll get to all of them. All right, I think,
Share
yeah.
the poll out.
Okay, great. I will quickly look at the answers. So this is expected, right? There's a lot of people on this call that are new to multi-threading. Thank you for joining us, and excited to hear what your key takeaways are. But not enough time is often the question. I'd encourage you all to look at not only recording technologies so that you have your calls recorded, automatically added to your customer success platform or CRM. And that way you don't have to worry as much about taking notes. And then there are these note takers, many of them are free, that you can start with, that will free up your time to build more relationships. Not the right resources or skills. Those kind of answers, I would say, you have time for team meetings, you have time for one-on-ones. Role playing can be as fast as 5 minutes. When we record the role plays during our training or SKOs, when we join the CSKOs, and we do this kind of role playing at mass, and then we have some of the groups do the presentation in front of everyone in the room, I always pull out my phone and record it and check how long did it take, so that not enough time is an excuse I would challenge. Make the time in your team meetings. Hey, we're going to do a 10 minutes of just role playing. Here's the scenario. It sounds like many of you are having this objection during your calls with your clients. I'm putting it up on the screen. Everyone get into pairs, and one person play CSM, one person play client, and let's get over this objection. And then you switch. And it's not only fun, you have to make these things fun, but it gives people that extra confidence to have these difficult conversations. Let's see, is anyone using it? Yes, 7%. That's fantastic. Similar to the percentage that LinkedIn shared, right? Of 9% in sales. So we're getting up there. We'll get that number up next year, or maybe next quarter. Let's accelerate that. And then you need help with multi-threading. Great. I hope today is helpful. And in a minute, I'll share how you can get more help. All right, another data point. As CSMs, we should all love data. Data is our best friend for getting more budget, more people on our team, more technology to help scale, especially if you don't have a budget for hiring. So companies that train CSMs generate more expansion leads. This is a 10% movement in revenue compounded month over month is substantial. So the question is, why are you not taking that 5 to 10 minutes weekly to just role play one scenario that your CSMs are grappling with, that you're reading in the Slack channels or during chats one-on-one with your clients? And then 8% of people surveyed by TSIA companies who give customer success managers targets and incentives will expand at an 8% higher rate. And I've seen this myself managing teams globally. It feels really good to win. And for anyone who's as competitive as I am, they're going to take this very seriously. If you want to do this and take it to another level, putting people in pods and working together to achieve these not only on an individual level, but on a pod level, and then putting pods to duke it out and then celebrating with those that do really well. It gives CSMs who are struggling or new to the profession an opportunity to lean on a CSM that's in their pod and say, hey, can you help me with this call? I'm struggling, right? They may not have the courage to go to their manager, but having someone that they're building a relationship can be incredibly powerful in achieving multi-threading and expansion. And then the other data point is you can work with your account managers or your CSMs, especially if there's an incentive with both of them. And if you compare CSMs that don't have incentives to do this with a team that has transitioned and look at the data points quarter over quarter, I would argue that your expansion rates will go up. All right. It's not just about the money. I know LinkedIn is filled with NRR and GRR and metrics that we all need to know. We have a whole page of dedicated to CS jargon on our website. It's a glossary. So if you want to talk jargon, you can speed up by reading that page. But it really isn't just about money. Multi-threading breaks down silos. It's amazing. Public companies have them as well. So no one's immune from the silos, especially as companies are going through transformation. Multi-threading can help break those down. You build better customer relationships. I am on a text level with most of my clients that we work with. I want them to know that I'm available if I'm leading a project. So it's incredibly important. And a lot of CSMs are probably saying, wait, I don't want to be on a text level with CSMs. I totally get it. But as you move up with clients in the enterprise space, you may become on a text level, right? Where everyone respects each other, but you're also, if you're trying to get that renewal in or expansion, you're able to text them and say, Michael, can you hop on a call? I was expecting this to come through on Friday. I know that these goals are important for you. Is there anything holding you up? Right? That kind of conversation. Increased confidence. I think this is incredibly important for CSMs. We face so much pressure now more than ever. The board is looking at where can we cut costs? How can we do more with less? And having the confidence to have these crucial conversations is critical. Earlier risk mitigation through the customer journey is incredibly important. People are all about opportunity, right? But what about the risk? If you don't know when the risks are occurring in your customer journey, you're going to find out when it's too late. They've already selected another platform. So having those relationships where you can ask those candid conversations, what does success look like in a year from now? Do you feel you achieved what you expected to achieve with our product this past quarter during launch? I know these are the 3 things you wanted. Here's what we achieved. Do you agree? So getting that sign off is not easy if you don't have the confidence to ask the right questions. And there's many more. I'm sure in the chat, people are adding more here. And measuring multi-threading, you need 3 to 6 stakeholders when companies are deciding. We have this happen all the time. Did you get a good experience out of the training or the assessment or the playbooks we delivered? Are there other things we can help you with? One person isn't going to decide. There's several people in the customer conversations that will want to have a say as to whether they continue to work with you or they buy more of your product. And then this is all according to Gong. You need 8 points of contact when you are closing an opportunity. And while the research done here wasn't part of customer success, I would argue that this can apply to CS as well. And Corey, I feel we need to put out a survey and get this information out for customer success professionals. All right, this is my favorite slide. Emilia, you're telling us to multi-thread. Where do we start? We have a big book of business. Let's break it down. When customers, which customers are ready to expand, and then when do we do it? When do we do it? Let's look at your customers by revenue. If you have a CSP, it's a lot easier to do this. Which of your customers have the highest revenue but the lowest engagement? Put them in a bucket. Then look at low revenue impact and low revenue engagement. I'm sorry, low engagement. Those customers may not be as important at this time if you have limited resources on your team. You're going to want to focus on high revenue clients who have low engagement. That's a huge risk, right? You have low stakeholder engagement. If that stakeholder leaves, you're probably going to be losing that big revenue. And you hear these stats all the time. 20% of companies in your org make up for the majority of your revenue. So if you lose these customers and they have low engagement and you lose the stakeholder, that client is immediately at risk. That's probably one you want to look at and focus on. If they have low revenue impact and high engagement, consider leveraging those voices as your advocates, right? Don't ignore them because they have low revenue impact. They may be amazing speakers on the stage. They may be willing to write you a G2 review. They are the advocates that when someone's emailing them on LinkedIn and saying, hey, I saw your logo on this company's website, would you recommend them? They're the ones who are going to say yes. So you want to make sure that you're leveraging them as your advocates. And then this is really the golden bucket, right? Clients who have high revenue impact and high engagement. Jane, who can you introduce me to in your department? I noticed that they're struggling with this, and we recently rolled out a new feature that I think can help them. Would you be willing to make an introduction, right? So this is the quadrant that you really want to focus on as you're thinking about segmenting your clients and starting to implement an initiative around multi-threading. All right, I've shared a lot. I'm going to pause and thank everyone who stayed on for the session today. If you'd like to talk CS strategy, I'm obviously very passionate about it. Feel free to book a complimentary 30-minute session. Corey's going to share a book, an ebook I wrote on multi-threading with you tomorrow, as she mentioned. And then I will stop sharing so we can focus on all of you and the questions you have.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Amelia. So we have had a number of questions come in. I've picked a few to start off with, so let's get started on those. And everyone else, if you have questions, continue to submit them, please. So we had a number of folks ask some version of this question, but this question says, what are some effective strategies when you have a customer that gatekeeps you from engaging with others in their organization that you know they can find value in your solution?
You know what, Corey, I'm so sorry. Can you repeat it one more time?
Yeah, absolutely. So the question is, what are some effective strategies when you have a customer that gatekeeps you from engaging with others in the organization? And they said, and you know that those others can find value in what you have to share.
Yes, that's definitely common. So in that scenario, if there was someone else involved and there's your sales counterpart or an account manager that was involved in selling, you can partner with the salesperson and ask them to reach out to that other person. You can also ask your manager to reach out to the manager at their organization. So this is where being a team player and working as a team becomes incredibly important. When I was leading a CS ops organization and I implemented a new onboarding strategy, during the sales process, I partnered with the head of sales at the org and said, would you be willing to have during the final calls with your sales team, let's test this, always A/B test, that we invite the person signing the contract on a mini kickoff. It's not a lot of their time, but 30 minutes. And we will commit on our end that the director of the team will be on that call. You've immediately created multi-threading. Now we know who the champion is, and the director on our side is able to say, John, should any escalations arise or concerns, you have my direct email address. We're going to CC you on this, and on a quarterly cadence, we are going to include you. All that should be recorded, right? And that should all be in your CSP, your CRM. As a result, even if the CSM leaves, all of this is now captured in your historical CSP. You can go back and introduce yourself to that decision maker and say, I'm new. Here's when I'm going to be reaching out to you. And you immediately are not stepping over your gatekeeper, but rather including them, but just letting them know that there are multiple tiers of people who are here to support them. And remember, when you're asking someone, letting them know, be really honest, like show empathy. I'm not here to step over you. I really believe that we can not only make you look like a champion, a hero in your organization, but we can genuinely help your company resolve this issue. You're here to help, and helping sells, right? So approaching it with that mindset should help.
I think those are all really great tips. I mean, can be a tricky situation. You don't want to make that person feel like you're ditching them or going over their head, but I think that's some great advice. Again, we have a number of questions that came in talking about this. So the question is, our CSMs have 100 plus clients of varying sizes. How would you approach multi-threading that you can scale at this level?
Yes, so as I mentioned earlier, I would start with your highest revenue clients who have high engagement. I think that's incredibly important to start. And if you have a CSP, you should be able to segment quickly so that they're not overwhelmed, and start by setting up a weekly cadence. If, for example, if a CSM has 100 clients, looking at who has the highest engagement and revenue and is up for renewal this quarter, right? So if you have 100 clients and 10 are renewing this quarter, then start with the highest engagement and revenue, and making sure that you have multiple contacts in that organization, that you're able to get ahead of the risk, and that you're able to pull in more people as necessary. And you may have to pull in people on your end. As a leader, you should absolutely make yourself available. And of course, with guidelines, say, here are the 3 things I need to know: customer, why the risk, why are you calling me in, how you expect me to help, give me a few options, and then who else is going to be on the call, so that that manager can come prepared for that call and you're not scrambling and side slacking. Of course, the client can see that you're doing that, and it's highly distractive. So you want to make sure that you put together a prepared front.
So many questions. Okay, so let's see. The next question is, how can you track and report how multi-threaded a CSM is with their accounts?
Yes, so hopefully the CSM is putting that information in the CSP. It should be a requirement. It should be part of the CSM's training as they're onboarding with your organization. And a customer should, unless you're in product led where there's one person and you really can't make others, you're not required to add more people or licenses. They're buying per license. It should be a requirement. You can't mark a customer onboarded if they don't have at least X number of contacts along with their titles, for example, or that you have put in their LinkedIn, for example. Those kind of things are incredibly important to make a requirement as part of their job.
Yeah, I agree. Those are important tasks. Let's see. So we have a question that says, it's common for layoffs to occur and eventually it may affect accounts you're responsible for. Do you have any recommendations on a tactful way to get introduced to the new primary point of contact if the former contacts have been relieved of their duty, it says.
Yes. So if, and I just talked to someone who's interested in working with growth molecules earlier this week, and I asked him, the CEO, what happens or what are your biggest challenges right now? And he said, in our space, we're having entire departments obliterated. They're just all let go. And suddenly we don't have any contacts. And I said, great. This is if this is the biggest issue, you as CEO can set up in a CSP. They do have one in place that goes out immediately to their founder, or if you've set up whoever the champion is that signed that contract, the CFO, for example, COO, that introduces you to the organization. Right now, one of our clients is going through a massive change in their services, and that email is coming directly from the president of the company. I'm on the email list, so I'm seeing them all. And it is very, I feel very taken care of, that I know that this president is willing to put his name on the line and introduce himself as, we know you're going through changes. Our organization is now changing our services, and this is how you can contact us. We're going to answer your questions. And so having a letter that goes out to whoever signed the contract, or if that person's gone too, having it go to someone. And I've done this. I've contacted them through LinkedIn. If you don't have their email address, contact them through LinkedIn. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And if you show that you've done your research and have empathy in the email and explain, this isn't a sales call, but we're actually partners. We're providing a service to you. The conversation completely changes. It's human to human instead of, hey, you're an account and I'm responsible for renewing you. Stop looking at these people as accounts. They are humans. And if you talk to them as such in email and in conversation, the relationship changes.
Thank you for that. I also appreciate sharing your stories there. Let's see, we have a question that says, what are some sample questions you could ask a customer as a CSM to help expand the relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you're introducing yourself and inviting them for the kickoff, obviously the salesperson, not obviously, there might be some organizations that can get away with not putting anywhere in a spreadsheet anywhere who signed the contract with at least their name and email address. So hopefully you have that. And if someone is introduced to you besides that person, making sure you CC the salesperson and the signer in the two, not the CC, inviting them both and having a clear agenda. If you're expecting someone with a title who may be managing multiple SaaS platforms to show up at your meeting, you better have a good subject line, not just their company name and yours. They may not even remember who your organization is. or care, as long as you relieve the pain point, but actually saying executive kickoff and putting in the agenda why they need to be there, why it's so important. The likelihood of them showing up is higher. And so I think that's really important in getting these people to show up and building relationship with them throughout the journey.
Got it. Amelia, we might have to do a follow-up blog post because there's a lot of questions coming in.
I know, and we're almost at the top of
I
the hour,
know.
so maybe we'll take one or two more.
Yeah. Here's a question. Could you confirm who is primarily responsible for getting new contacts added to accounts? Or who would be your suggestion? Since we
Okay.
want to say that it's not everyone's responsibility.
Yeah. So during the sales process, it absolutely needs to be the salesperson, right? And then during the handoff, the CSM, especially in enterprise, needs to confirm these are the contacts. If you have a CRM that tracks all your emails in your CRM or CSP, they're automatically adding those names at the account level, or they should. So you can be during the handoff confirming that you have the right people and their titles and their roles. Often, if your product is complex, you need an IT person to be at some part of the onboarding journey. So having the conversation, the 10-minute conversation with sales to confirm all that information is important. That's the CSM's responsibility as they take on the new customer. And it might be an onboarding manager or professional services to start. And if your product is very complex and then it goes to CSM and then it goes to account management for renewal, you need whoever's taking it over to have that responsibility. They want the right contacts so that they can continue the multi-threading and having the right conversations at the right level to ensure continuous impact and renewals and expansion.
Got it. This will be our last question. And it's kind of a flip, I think, maybe a little bit of what we've been talking about, but it says, is it important to multi-thread with your company too? In other words, introducing a customer to multiple people on your internal team.
Yeah, I think especially during risks, I know when I've been working with teams, and we put together a tiger team, assigning head of product to a group of customers with the CSM, the CEO taking on 10 that they've really become more involved in so that they really understand the client pain points, I think can be incredibly important. Also, you always want to have a main point of contact in your organization that takes part in the conversation. So, for example, a client I was working with, some of their larger clients through our discovery process and an assessment were sharing that they were having a lot of challenges with the product and wanted to share product feedback. We invited the head of product and the CSM of each customer to host a meeting with that client. So one, it could be recorded, and then two, decide what do we do with these challenges? Are they general themes? Is this customer just complaining? What can we do? And then following through so that you have that constant leader, the CSM, and that the product manager or leader suddenly doesn't become a CSM for that customer as well.
Got it. That's great advice. Well, thank you so much, Amelia. Again, we've had lots of questions. So clearly this is a topic that is of interest to people. I do want to remind everyone, because also this was a question that kept getting asked. We will be sending out a link to the recording tomorrow so you can watch it again, share with your friends, colleagues, everyone. And I'd like to, so a survey will pop up at the end of this webinar, and I'd like to ask you just to take a moment to provide your feedback on today's webcast. And I want to thank Amelia again and everyone else for joining us. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks, Corey. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.